everybody, welcome back for another video. Today it's all about January, and I'm excited for this video because I had an amazing reading month in January. And what it all comes down to for me is that it was very, very fun. I think some of that fun comes from the Readathon that I got to participate in with the Keymark Discord. We had such a blast. I'm recording this now like literally the day after it ended. It was so fun. So thank you AR Witham and everybody over at the Keymark for hosting that and including me. Like I had an absolute blast. So that absolutely contributed to the fun factor for my January because I love the community aspect of BookTube and how connected it makes us. And I just had so much fun with that. So we did win, which makes it even more fun for me. My team name was Pros Before Hoes, and we just like kicked ass the whole time. So much fun. Thank you guys for everything. So that dynamic really contributed to my fun factor, I think. But also when it comes down to it, I just love new beginnings. I love book ones. I love fresh starts, and that's kind of what the new year symbolizes for me. I don't really do New Year's resolutions per se, but I enjoy the reset. So I do spend my December kind of wrapping up loose ends and wiping the slate clean so I can start January fresh, and it totally worked for me this year because I felt that that sense of beginning, and it was really fun to do some stuff that was brand new with new friends, but also revisit some rereads, some favorites, and also just allow myself the luxury to say yes to recommendations on the spot and be spontaneous. Like I just loved how my January panned out because it's really, really worked for me. So I'm going to jump right in and show you guys everything I read. All right, first up, before I get too far into my January reads, we're going to do one that kind of fell right in the middle. I mentioned in December I spent a lot of my efforts on wrapping up loose ends so January could all be about new things, but I did have one that crossed over from December to January, which is fine. That happens. We had a lot of guests, family staying at our house and hanging out for like the last week of January all the way over to New Year's, and it was so fun and I was happy for that time, but it did not give me much reading time. So Jade Legacy spilled over from the end of December to the beginning of January. I read like 60% of it in December and 40% in January, so I'm not really sure where to count it for numbers wise, but that doesn't really matter. The point is, this was a good book. Jade Legacy is the third and final book in the Greenbone saga, and I read this over the course of the year. You know, a book here, and I waited a couple months, and I read the next one, and I quite enjoyed all of them. I don't see this necessarily being a series that lands on, jiggling my table here. I don't see this necessarily being a series that lands on my personal all-time favorites, but I really enjoyed my time with the series, and I definitely understand why it's so beloved. This had awesome characters, really cool magic, a very unique setting that totally worked for me. I think it was probably a little too heavy on the like economic side and the just the literal aspects of their world. And when I'm reading urban fantasy, I feel like I need personally more like in-your-face magic to feel like I'm not just in a real world. So the world building was really good here because it felt realistic, but there were times when it was just a little too technical for me. But that being said, I still recommend the series. I would give the series overall like 4 stars. Very, very good. As far as this book goes itself, the first half of it was kind of a drag for me, but the second half of it was really, really excellent. So kind of a strange book to rate when, there were moments of it that I was like, well, this is 2 stars. I'm bored. But then when it has a 5-star second half, like a 5-star ending, it really does save it. And it brought the whole story, all 3 books, full circle in a really beautiful and heartwarming way that was like heartbreaking, but at the same time, like the exact ending the story needed. So really great trilogy. I'm glad I read it. For 2023, one thing I decided to do for myself, a little bit of a treat yourself moment, if you will, is indulge in some rereads. Like all year long, I want to read new stuff, obviously. I would never be able to stay away from new stuff. The FOMO would just kill me. But I really have been craving some rereads, and so I told myself, just do it. So I have no regrets so far. I did 3 rereads in January, and I had a great time with all of them. The first book I read, and this is just the jacket, I'll tell you why in a second, but the first book I read in 2023, as far as starting and finishing it, was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I read the whole thing in one day. It was so fun. I finished Jade Legacy that morning, and my husband and I were taking down the Christmas tree and all the decorations and stuff, and I put my headphones in, and I spent the whole day with Jim Dale, and we did chores, and I listened to Harry Potter, and it was so fun. I had a great day, and I'm starting this Harry Potter reread with the intent of asking myself, does this series still belong on my personal top 10 favorite fantasy series? And I want to rework that list later in the year, but first I think there are a few series that deserve a reread before they get re-ranked, and Harry Potter is one of them. And one book in, I had an amazing time. How much of that was nostalgia and comfort versus this is a good book? It's just, I think at this point it's impossible for me to even differentiate, because whether I want to be objective or not, Harry Potter lives in my heart. So, like, I got little baby Voldemort up there. Like, I love Harry Potter, you guys. First of all, side note real quick, if you want to see all of these gorgeous, amazing dust jackets from Nerdy Ink, on my Instagram profile, I have a permanent like story saved where I photographed the whole set. Definitely check it out because these are really, really gorgeous. But anyway, I had a great time reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I'm looking forward to starting book 2 ASAP. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you why I only have the dust jacket. Lucy, my 11-year-old, decided that she wanted to read, or start a reread herself. She's read up through book 4, and she wasn't quite ready for them. I think she was reading them to do something with me and have something like we did together. And she loves the movies. She got up to book 4 and then kind of fizzled out. Well, she's a little older now, so she also is starting a reread. So she has my hardcover of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I'm not actually quite sure why she has it, because she has her own complete set of the paperbacks. But either way, she's borrowing it. I would not let her have this, and that's why I'm just sitting here holding a floppy old dust jacket. All right, a couple more rereads. I reread book 1 of the Red Rising series, and it is titled Red Rising, and I had a great time with it. So at this point, I think most people who watch my channel are probably a little familiar with the structure of this series and the asterisk warning that comes with this first book, because the series changes a lot after the first book. I think his writing improves, the story and the plot itself takes a hard left turn, and the tone in general becomes much more adult. So from book 2 on, you get a lot of changes. But I was one that actually enjoyed this book quite a bit on the first read. I like where it goes even better, but I did not have major problems with this book. I liked it. Reading it again the second time after I have a lot more knowledge and hindsight, and I know some of the significance of the things that happen in this book, I appreciated it and even enjoyed it much more. So really, really liked this, and I'm so excited to continue because I've only read through book 3, so I'm excited to read books 4 and 5 before the much anticipated release of book 6. The third and final book that I reread in January was, no surprise to anyone, Assassin's Apprentice. I have committed to rereading Farseer, which is the first 3 books in the Realm of the Elderlings series. I have not committed necessarily. It's not in stone that I'm going to reread the entire Realm of the Elderlings right at this moment in 2023, consecutively, 1 book a month. But I think I will, because I just don't see myself ever not wanting to be in the midst of a Realm of the Elderlings reread. Like right now, it's all I can think about. I'm still obsessed with it after finishing this final book, book 16, Assassin's Fate, in, when did I read that? October? Was it? Anyway, I haven't stopped thinking about it. So, what can I say? I knew that book 1 would be just monumentally better on a reread, and I wasn't wrong. I loved that book the first time I read it, but knowing everything I know, knowing the full story, the full world, all the significance of small things that were happening, having that knowledge, reading it again, it was just so good. So I don't see myself regretting my choice to reread Realm of the Elderlings, because if book 1 was any indicator, it's going to be just magnificent the second time around. Next, I want to show you a couple of books that I actually planned to read, and I read them. So I mentioned earlier in the video that I got to take part in the Keymark Readathon, and basically the way we had it set up was that you could earn points for reading up to 5 books. And so I had 5 books planned that matched the prompts and maxed out bonus points and everything. Very strategic in the way I went into the readathon. I did make some changes, but I want to show you all the things that I read that I said I was going to read, and I read them. The first one was A Touch of Light by Tiago Abdallah. And this is a self-published book by an author that I've become friends with and have a lot of respect and admiration for. We got to know each other throughout Discord, just here and there, watching him interact with people, watching him on interviews and stuff. I'm just like, this is not only a cool guy that I really respect and I want to see him succeed because he's just so nice and personable, but I keep hearing really, really good things about his book. So I got this for Christmas for my brother-in-law Ian off of my Amazon wish list. Like, he totally did right by me and cleaned up on my Amazon wish list. And I was so excited to get this. This book is absolutely gorgeous. And the cool thing about it is it's even, I love when they do this, the naked, so you can strip it down of all of its outer shell, and inside it's just as like silky and beautiful. I really was impressed with the quality of this book. It's really, really nicely bound. Buy it, you guys. Don't get the Kindle one. You can read it on Kindle Unlimited, and so if that's your thing, you should just read it. But if you like to collect books, do pick up the hardcover because it's just beautiful. Anyway, the book itself was also really good. Like, how about that? So I was immediately very, very intrigued by the three main POVs are just like immediately interesting. The world is very cool, and the concept behind the structure of the world and the hierarchy and the way they revere life and death was just immediately fascinating to me. I really enjoyed this book, and in the end, my only major quibble with it is probably going to be what draws some people in. I tend to like a little more fat on my books. I like a little more meandering. I like a little more of a slow burn, and this book is pretty action-packed. The pacing of it is just non-stop. He does it well, though. Like, he writes action scenes really, really, really well. But every now and then he'd come out of nowhere and the world building would just be like so rich and beautiful and like really well developed. And the whole time I was just like, that. I want more of that. So I am hoping in book 2 that we get more fat on the bones, a little more world building, a little more character development. But I say that, but I still feel like I know these characters pretty well. I remember them well. I remember what their motivations are. I'm excited to know what happens next. This series has a griffin that automatically earns like major cool points for me. So I really enjoyed this book. It was a quick read. It was fun and exciting, and it left me definitely wanting to know what happens next. So I will be reading book 2 for sure. Please check it out. This is Lancelot by Giles Christian, and it's another one that I read for the read-along. And this was an interesting one for me because ever since reading The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell, I have not been able to stop thinking about the Arthurian legend and all the different takes on it. So Warlord Chronicles really was my first experience with like diving deep into the Arthurian legend, but it is a very controversial, like, interesting spin on it. So I've spent the time since then like doing some research, watching a documentary, listening to a podcast, like kind of zeroing in on the legend because I find it to be fascinating. And since then I've picked up several more books, and I would love to kind of like take an interest in that and do a deep dive. So I have some other novels lined up that I want to read, but when I saw that this Giles Christian read-along was being organized, I was like, count me in. Because I read Hellmouth and I really liked his writing style. Just a snippet of it was all I got, was a snippet. But I liked the way he wrote, and I'm like, this is perfect. I'm already interested in, the Arthurian legend. So this book is called Lancelot. And considering my only real experience with the Arthurian legend is Warlord Chronicles, if anyone's read that, you know that Bernard Cornwell has a very interesting take on Lancelot and how he portrays him. So I knew going into this I was already going to be kind of hard for me to like shift my mindset from a Cornwell Lancelot to a Christian Lancelot, because I don't think there's a right or wrong way to write fiction, but it's hard to get a headcanon out of your head. That's why it's a headcanon. So this whole book was an interesting experience for me, because for the first maybe 100 pages or so, I was really, really enjoying myself. Like, he starts out as a little kid. I love that when you follow somebody throughout their whole life in a book. Interesting stuff was happening like right from the get-go. Like, I was like, wow, like they're not, he's not holding anything back when it comes to like violence and action and plot twists, like right from the beginning. So I really, really liked the first 100 pages. But then for maybe the next 350 pages, I was like just kind of waiting for more to happen. But it was a strange like stage of waiting because I never hated it. I never thought it was bad, and I never wanted to quit. I don't know, it just felt like kind of flatlined for a long time. And I'm the one who likes slow books. Like I just said that I wish A Touch of Light had a little more slowness to it, a little more trotting, so I could spend time with those characters. But this one, I felt like it just wasn't the right type of slow burn that I was looking for. So I was getting really discouraged with it. But then the last, I don't know, maybe 150 pages or so, 5 stars. But I did decide to move forward with the next book. The next book is called Camelot. So far, there's Lancelot and Camelot, and I think there are more books to come, but those are the 2 that are published so far. And the reason I decided to continue it was because even though this book did feel like a chore at times, I'm interested in the Arthurian legend. Like, I want more of it. And I already own the book. I already own the audiobook. There's a read-along going on. All that adds up to just read it because I liked it enough to keep going, even though there are parts of it that were kind of like snooze fest. So I am going to continue with Camelot, which is about Galahad, who's Lancelot's son. And I'm going to continue with that in February. So right now, I'm not really sure where I'm at with this. It's like a thumbs up-ish. This book was one of my maybe if I have time books, and I'm so glad I had time because it is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. And I loved it. I'm like kicking myself for not reading it until now. I mean, I understand why I didn't read it till now because I was reading other stuff and there's so many good books and you can't read them all immediately. But I remember the hype. People read The Justice of Kings this time last year and they were going crazy for it because it was so good. I had the book. It was given to me by a viewer, Roxy. If you're watching, thank you so much. And it just sat on my shelf for a long time. And it was always a maybe. It was always I really want to get to that if I have time. I'm so glad I got to it. I'm so glad I had time. And I am kind of glad that I read it when I did because now book 2, The Tyranny of Faith, is practically just sitting there waiting for me. And I don't have to wait in between the 2. But I really, really liked that book. So really glad I got to it, and thank you for everyone who keep reminding me about it and encouraging me to pick it up. So that alone would have been an amazing reading month, but believe it or not, I have 5 more books here to show you because I was just a reading machine in January. And as you're about to see, I did read some smaller books that didn't take me hardly any time at all. This is The Alchemist by Michael Scott, and it is part of a series called The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel. And this was recommended to me by my 13-year-old niece and also my friend Caitlin. And I picked it up kind of on a whim. My niece did a great job of selling it to me. She was excited. Her excitement was contagious. And so I said, I'm going to take your word for it. And I listened to it on audio, and it was so good. It was so fun. It's middle grade. It's urban fantasy, and it deals with some historical fiction and some historical characters as well, and just has a really fun vibe that I was immediately into. So I read it, and then I was like, these are the same books that my friend Caitlin keeps recommending. So I got with her, we chatted about it again, and I was just like, I gotta read more middle grade if I'm being honest, because I'm not always a fan of YA, but I think I do really vibe with middle grade when I'm in the mood for it. Caitlin, being the absolute gem that she is, sent me the box set of the first 3 books, so I'm really excited to get to more of those because I had so much fun reading book 1. These next 2 books were recommended to me by my friend Tori. If you are not subscribed to Tori's channel, take a moment to please head over there and subscribe to her channel and check out her content because she makes great recommendations. These were Tori's books of the year for 2022. And as I have some time and some openings, I think I'm going to sneak around BookTube and pull up some of my friends' book of the year content from 2022 and previous years and just go out of my way to make sure I'm reading these recommendations from people who are so well read and have really good taste. And her 2 books of the year, she kind of cheated and had 2, but they were Never Die by Rob J. Hayes and The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and I loved them both. So The Outsiders is an amazing coming-of-age story. It says a heroic story of friendship and belonging, and that just really does sum it up. I am a sucker for this little slice of specific genre, 1950s, 1960s group or gang of, ruffian kids who are good as gold on the inside, rough on the out, on the edges. I'm a sucker for it, and it worked so well for me. I feel like a lot of people did read this when they were in high school. I did not. This is 180 pages. It's available at every library on the planet. Pick this up ASAP and read it if you haven't, because I just thought it was an amazing story about American teenagers in a time of life that is just so far removed from anything I've ever known, yet always manages to feel nostalgic for me when it's done right. So strongest of recommendations. Please pick this up if you're looking for something that's a little break from your heavy fantasy or, out there sci-fi. If you want something that's a little more grounded, but just a nice little palate cleanser, this is the very definition of it. So please pick it up. I'm just wildly impressed by it. And this, Never Die by Rob J. Hayes, was just a non-stop ball of fun. So tonight, actually, this is Wednesday the 8th, I believe, and tonight I'm going on Tori's channel, and we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, but I guarantee you we're going to talk about Never Die. I had so much fun with this. It was cinematic, it was action-packed, it was so short, but managed to develop and round out these characters to where I felt like very attached and just really connected with all of them. Even the ones that didn't get that much screen time, I found myself being like, I actually give a damn about what happens to these good bad guys and bad good guys. Very, very cool. One thing it did, which is something I love, is it continued, in my opinion, to get better as it went. Some books have peaks and valleys, and you take the good with the bad, but I enjoyed this from the beginning. I was immediately hooked. I liked the writing style. I liked the story that was being set up, but I felt like it kept getting better, and the ending was just really cool, and I was just like, okay, that was good. So I am definitely wanting to read more Rob J. Hayes, and I'm super excited that I just went with my gut, trusted Tori's recommendation, and just picked it up on a whim. And lastly, I was really craving some Stephen King. I haven't read a ton of Stephen King since The Dark Tower. I read all of The Dark Tower in, months 1 through 7 of 2022. And then I read Fairy Tale, I read Cujo, Christine. I sprinkled some more throughout, but it had been months since I just picked up a Stephen King book and said, what the heck, let's go. And that's exactly what I did with Dolores Claiborne. It was so good, you guys. So my friend Steph had read it recently and was just like, you're going to love it. Have you read this? Because I think you're going to love it. This is the ultimate, mom power, girl power, women's intuition, trust your gut, be a bad bitch if you need to kind of book. I loved it. When it comes to my book of the month, I am actually sitting here looking at several books and still, I can't make my mind up. And I would say it's probably between The Outsiders and The Justice of Kings. Even though I could make a case for Never Die, I could make a case for Dolores Claiborne. I don't count rereads. There were some kind of in the middle books over there. But honestly, I did have super great books this month. If I'm going to pick between The Outsiders and The Justice of Kings, I think I will go with The Justice of Kings because I feel like it's been a while since I have read fantasy that feels this tight. I've read a lot of classics, things that are beloved, and everyone loves them for a reason. They've been around for a long time. They're famous. Everyone else is trying to capture that magic again, trying to chase that high that we got from our favorites. I read a lot, and I feel like it's been a long time since I've read something that was executed so well. This has the potential of being a favorite series. Just knowing that on book 1, I really like that it's epic fantasy, but it feels tight and it feels grounded. I don't know. I'm just really excited to see where this goes because I feel like so many authors are trying to capture exactly what this did capture, and I can't even quite put my finger on what it is, but it made me go, okay, this is what I wanted from that series, or this is what I think that other series was trying to do, and it didn't quite get there. And it reminds me of some other series that I think fly under the radar. So I just think he's done something really special here, and I'm super excited to see where the whole story goes. And lastly, something really exciting that happened in January is my channel hit 2,000 subscribers. So thank you so much. If you're new here, thank you for pushing me over the edge of that big number of 2,000. And for my subscribers who have been here for the long haul, thank you for sticking around, for always clicking on the videos and commenting and just making me feel welcome here. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you had an amazing January, and I will talk to you soon.